Artists, I'm here to show you quickly and briefly how to make a simple artist logo. So the directions I have posted on the left-hand side of your drawing. You are designing a logo to represent yourself as an artist. Your logo will include your name, a simple image that you draw, and contained inside both of those, inside a simple shape. You must use word art to write your name. Use 2 different colors from the color wheel plus black and white, and I've given you a palette for that, and I misspelled the word palette, so I'm going to take out the extra L. You may not use somebody else's artwork, okay, for your logo, your image, any of that. It needs to be your own, it needs to be original. And I did give you examples on Google Classroom of famous logos. It should look good, small, medium, and large. All right, so I've given you a palette, and you are going to add 2, did I say, it says 2 different, and this says 3 colors. And that is incorrect. I don't know why it says that. It should say 2 colors. And this middle one here can be gray. Since you have black and white, you can have gray. And so I can go into my color palette and add that. And then we do that correctly from the fill bucket. Okay, any shades of gray, black and white are acceptable. So any 2 colors that you like, since your logo is about you as an artist, you should pick colors that have meaning to you. I really like blue violet, and I think I will add a nice deep blue. I keep doing the outline instead of the fill bucket, so I just undo. Okay, so I have kind of a blue violet, or a red violet and blue as my 2 colors. Now I can use lighter and darker versions of those, but I don't want to get too complicated. So here's my palette. I may not use colors that are not on here. I want to use a simple shape for the outline of my logo, and here are some examples. But I have a shapes menu up here, so I can pick a shape that's not too complicated, and I am going to put that around my whole logo. So I'm just going to grab an oval for now. Notice that it came out as a perfect circle. If I want to keep it a perfect circle but make it bigger, I'm going to hold shift with one hand and then click and drag from any corner. Okay, so that would count as a lighter version of this blue. But let's go ahead. I chose this darker blue so I can see, in fact, I can remind myself which blue that was in my color palette, and that says that it is dark cornflower blue number 3. So if I click on here, I can go find that one, and if I float my mouse over it, there it is. Okay. And I'm just going to leave that there for now. So it says to include your name. It says to use word art to write your name. Word art is in the insert menu, which is up here across the top. So if I go to insert, a little over halfway down is word art. I'm going to type in my first name. I'm going to capitalize the first letter as we do with names, and I'm going to hit enter. And Google decided to fill it in with the last color I used. But if I take that and put it on top of this figure, and if I make this figure bigger, which I need to do, again, I'm holding down shift if I want to keep it. Nope, that did not work. Undo. Control Z or the back arrow. I'll try that again. I'm going to hold down shift with one finger and click and drag any corner, not the side or the top. So if I put my background on this, I can barely see my name. I need contrast or difference. So if I really like the circle, notice that Google is giving me some red guidelines to help me line things up. Right now I'm going to select just my name, and I'm going to pick that red violet that I had. And notice it's easier to read, but these are both what we'd call kind of a medium to dark value. And value is how light or dark a color is, or even a black, white, or shade of gray, okay, a value. So I can do several things with my name. I'm just going to remove that from my object and let my object just hang out by itself for a minute. So Arial font is the default. It's a very typical font. I'm going to say it's not very interesting. We've seen it a million times. So in Google, you have a set of default fonts that you were given when your account was first created, but you can also click on A+ up here and add more fonts. So I'm not going to take the time to do that. It's pretty simple. Okay, I have already selected a lot of fonts, so I have a lot of options. If I click on a font, it'll automatically change my name. Okay, and I can see how it looks that way. Some of them are all capital letters. Most of them are a mixture of capital and lowercase. Remember that you can make your name bold. I kind of like that. That kind of looks like a medieval wood carving, I think. So if I put my name in that red violet on top of this blue, and notice that vertical line that shows me that it's exactly in the center, that can be helpful. You can resize your object here. Word art behaves as an object. You should not be using a text box. Okay, in a different video, I showed you the difference between a text box. I'll just do it briefly here. With a text box, I can type my name in, but it has to stay the size of the font that I have told it to be. I can go and grab that recent font. I used one called Almendra. Whoops, I have to select it. So I double clicked it to select it, Almendra. Now I can make that bold. I can change the size. It goes up to 96 on here. I believe I can also just type in a number. So if it's selected, I can type in 112, and it should go bigger. It does. But if I just change the size of the text box, it does not change the size of my text. The text remains the size that's typed into that window. Where if I'm using word art, I'm going to hold shift so that I can just change the size without stretching or pinching it. Notice I can also stretch it taller. I can stretch it wider. If you do this too much, you're going to make it unreadable. So feel free to play with it a little bit, but if you stretch it or pinch it too much, it's going to be hard to read, and then it's not very useful for a logo. I'm just going to undo with my back arrow, or I can do Control-Z. I can click that as many times as I want to back up. But the main idea here is with word art, you can change the size freely. You can resize freely. Now I can select my font and I can choose a text color, and I can certainly choose the color that I used on this other one. But if I put these side by side, you'll notice that the text in the text box does not have an outline, and my word art defaults. It automatically gives you a 1 pixel thickness of a black outline, and I can change that. I can make it a different color, except orange isn't on my palette. I think it looks cool though. So I can keep that in mind for a future project, or if I wanted to do something on my own, I could certainly do that. For this project, we're going to stick with the colors on our palette. So if I wanted a light valued outline around this, I could use a lighter blue or a lighter red violet, or I could use black, white, or shade of gray. And black is not going to be lighter. So I could just try white for my outline. That kind of looks cool. I can make my border thicker. And again, with the text box, there's no border. I can also fill this in with what's called a gradient. So if I click on my fill bucket, I have solid colors and I have a default palette. Notice I have custom down below. So I can choose more colors than that, and gradient, and I also have a custom. So I'm looking at this gradient and I don't see red violet. So I can just go, I can pick something. So I'm going to go into the cornflower blue, which is the color I have here. I have lighter versions, and I might say, you know what, I really like that, but where am I going to bring in my second color? It's going to be more interesting if I have more than just the one color in there, even though this is darker and lighter versions. There we go. It's exactly in the center right now. So I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. If I want to have a gradient that transitions from red violet to maybe light blue, if I go to dark blue, it's going to blend into the background. So let me, nope, double clicking just gets the text. Let me go back to fill color and go to custom, and it will show you how you have your gradient. So the custom gradient right now, it's linear, which means that it goes in a line. This one goes vertically from lighter blue to darker blue, and it's just kind of a medium blue. So light blue to medium blue. It says it's at a 90-degree angle, and I can add stops. So right now I have 2 boxes. I have one at each end. I could, if I add a stop, it's going to put a little circle in the middle, and you'll notice if I drag that, it adjusts the preview window. It moves where that darkness is, but that has a color in it. So I could add red violet there, and I could play around with that. I think that looks kind of cool. Maybe I will, I think I'll leave it there. So let's try that and see how that looks. I think that looks pretty interesting. And again, that's something you cannot get with a text box. So I'm just going to say, you know what, text box has its place, and it's not useful for a logo. I can do a lot more interesting things with my logo with the text box. Now, one more thing you can do with your word art is you can add a drop shadow. So if I go up and click on format options, Notice drop shadow is one of my choices. I can select that box. But now if I click the little arrow to see the drop down menu for this, I have 4 slider bars that I can change. Transparency, this is about a shadow. My shadow color right now is black. The angle, right now if I look for a shadow under here, I can kind of see a little bit of a shadow underneath it. So I need to select that to be able to change it. So I'm going to make the distance of my shadow further. So notice that that shadow gets further away and it becomes more obvious. I think that's a little bit far. So I'm going to drag that slider bar back a little closer. Now angle right now, it's almost straight down. So if I move that slider bar, it's going to shift that shadow around, kind of like it's moving around a circle. So I'm going to decide, maybe I want it down and to the right, but not so far. Okay, blur radius is, do you want a sharp edge on your shadow? If I have it all the way at 0 or super far over, it just kind of disappears, it fades out. So how blurry is the edge of your shadow? And you can decide that. It does give the illusion that your object is floating above the background, okay, because it's casting a shadow. So I could change the color of my shadow. Maybe I just want it to be a dark gray. Because this is against a dark blue background, that dark gray actually gets a little bit lost. So I could use a dark blue, and something strange happened. Okay, I see what happened. Let's just try that again. And the dark blue, it's barely visible against my background. So I could also choose to change my shape in the background. So there I have it right in the center. I think that my outline is too thick. So I'm going to go back to my border color is white, and I have it on 4. So let's try 3 or 2, the border weight. So that's how I like that at 2. Now my background I could also set as a gradient, but if you have a gradient on a gradient, it can get to be a little bit distracting. But I can just try it, right? No harm in trying. Just see if that feels a little 3-dimensional. Okay, I'm not in love with it. I feel like I want lighter to, now I've got light on top of light. So I'm just gonna undo and put it back how I had it. I'm at this point, I don't know how I feel about my thin black outline. I could make that thicker, or I could get rid of it. I don't have any black anywhere else, so it's not really matching up with anything. So I'm just gonna leave that for now. So I have 2 out of 3 things. The last thing I need is the hardest. It is to add an image or a drawing of something. So when you're making your logo, once you have your name written with a font that you like, colors that you like in word art, you don't have to do a drop shadow, but I recommend it. I have a simple shape around the outside, and I could change that if I want. These are not my only options. These are just some examples. But I want to think about, maybe I should have thought about this before I chose my colors, but I want to think about something that I can add that just tells a little bit about me. So it's going to tell a very small story about me, but it should be something that's important to me, or it represents something that I do. Now I mentioned that this is for you as an artist. You can take that literally. If you are a person who paints or does sculpture or draws, you might put a paintbrush or a painter's palette or something like that. We already have one over here. But this is a picture of one that I brought in from the internet. Now we can't use that in your artwork. That's just to give you the idea that you're collecting colors. Okay. So whatever you want to draw, you need to draw it yourself. You can bring in an image from the internet to look at to help you to understand what something might look like. So maybe I want to draw a particular type of a flower. I want to put a flower or a butterfly. These are things I put into my logos before. Maybe I want to put in a tree or an ocean wave. When I think about things that are important to me, I like reading. I like writing. Maybe I want to think of myself as a writer and put in an image of a book, okay, that I've maybe to think about something I've written. But I want to keep in mind, I don't want to put any more text on here. So if it's a book, I don't want to put any writing on that because that's going to distract from my name. So I think I'm going to do a type of flower, and I am going to go to Insert, and I'm going to look for an image on the web just as a resource. So this is for me to look at. So I'm going to think about, I really like tulips. That's a specific type of flower. So I'm doing a Google image search for tulip, and I'm looking for one. This one is a drawing of a tulip, so it's kind of simplified it. Some of these are face on. I think I'm going to bring this one in just to look at. So I selected that image. I'm going to insert it. And here comes an image of a tulip. This one is already on a circle, it looks like. So I'm just going to analyze that picture and kind of look at it. So I need to use my drawing tools, in this case, the curve tool or the polyline tool that's in here. I can use the scribble tool. They do work quite differently. So the curve tool is something that I've demonstrated how to use in other videos. But if I want to make a shape that's curved and it's not a shape that's already in my shapes menu, I have a limited amount of shapes in my shapes menu. Okay. So say I want to make the shape of the petal on the side. So I'm going to use my curve tool, and I click once, and I'm just going to kind of follow that curve shape around, and I come back up the other side. And each time I click, I'm leaving a mark, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So there's that basic shape. Usually when you draw with the curve tool, it's not going to turn out exactly as you want it right away. So notice I double clicked it, and everywhere I clicked as I was building that shape, it left a little purple circle, and I can move that circle. So I can click and drag and move that circle a little bit to adjust my shape. Maybe I want this a little pointier. Okay, so you can play around with that. It does take practice to get good. If you try this and it doesn't work the first time, don't give up. You can always undo. But this really lovely kind of red, orange, and orange are not on my palette. So I want to stick to what's on my palette. So I can select a lighter version of that blue violet. Okay. And then I've got these other shapes here. Now that gave it that black outline, right? I can get rid of that. I can just click on transparent. So I'm going to go to the curve again, and I'm going to look at this shape that almost looks like the teardrop shape. So I could certainly combine things. There is a teardrop shape, and now I can create a teardrop shape. It's always going to default to this light blue with a black outline, and that may or may not work out the way I want. But I can play around with it and see if I can get a good teardrop shape. It's a lot rounder than I was hoping for. And unless I hold shift, it really does distort. So it has a little diamond, and I can kind of pull that up. I'm not really in love with the shape. It's a lot rounder than I wanted. Okay, I can rotate it with a little circle at the top. If I pull down the bottom, it stretches it out in a kind of an unpredictable way that I didn't really want, but maybe it kind of works. Okay, again, I'm going to have it match or match closely. I'm going to make that outline transparent, and I'm going to pick the fill color, maybe a little darker. Now notice that this one in front and this petal should be in front. So always the last thing that you draw, it's like you're stacking paper on little paper cutouts. So I can select an object, and I can go to the arrange menu, and I can tell it to bring it to the front. So that's under order. Bring to front or bring forward. I'm going to bring it all the way to the front. So now it's in front of this shape. So I can move that down. I can also just grab this shape. If I only click on it once, I get the resize option, right? I can do that. Okay, but if I double click it, then I get back to those little purple dots for each place that I selected. And I'm not super thrilled with this just because I used a shape from the shapes menu. So let's try that with the curve tool instead. You want to be able to use both. But for this assignment, I expect you to use the curve tool. I expect to see that you have tried it. And yes, it can be kind of frustrating. Once it connects back to itself, it will close the figure and fill it in. If I double click, I want this to be a little different at the top. The more times that you click, the more changes you can make. So if you don't click very many times, you won't have as many options to change it. So I like that shape a lot better than this teardrop. I'm just going to select this teardrop, hit backspace, and get rid of it. So again, I'm going to bring this petal to the front. That's in the arrange order, bring to front. Okay, and I can build another one, or I can duplicate this one. So under your edit menu, you have the option to duplicate. Now this one doesn't have a shortcut. No, that's delete. I'm just kidding. Duplicate does have the shortcut of Control D. Just kidding. So this one is exactly the same, but I want to flip it. So I have a couple of choices. I can just grab this side and pull it over. And here I have these little marks that show me when I got about the same size. Or I'm going to undo Control Z until I get back. I can go to the Arrange menu and I have a Rotate option. If I want to flip it horizontally, right, straight across. So I can do that. And always the last thing that you drew is going to be in front unless you tell it to do something else. Now, you can see these petals are kind of transparent, and that's cool. So if you want to do that, if you go to Custom, you have a transparency slider. So I can bring that over and have it be a little bit transparent. And now I can see these other pieces in there, and I think that's kind of cool. I feel like I want to do the same thing to that one. So I'm going to make that one a little bit transparent as well. And now you can see my stacked petals. Okay. Maybe I want another one, or maybe I don't. If I want to basically glue these together, I need to select all the pieces that I want to group, is what that's called, but it's like gluing them. I have a couple of different ways I can do that. If I select one and I hold down the Shift button with another finger and I select the next one, now you can see a little tiny blue outline around both of those. This other one is not in the box. So if I click on that one, then I have a blue outline around all three things. I can go Arrange Group. There is a keyboard shortcut. Okay, and now if I click anywhere on that, they're all glued together. So I'm going to undo, and ungroup them. So at this point, another option, those are, let me Control Y, let me redo, make them transparent. So that's the same as doing the redo button up there. I can also just draw a box around the objects that I want to group. But the trick here is, notice that I was on top of this circle. So I was in its space, so it also grabbed that, and I don't want to group it with that yet. So I could just move this by itself, and move this by itself, and move this by itself. Notice they're still stacked in the order that they were. I can also grab these things and group them and just move them over. Okay, so now if I click and drag and I draw a box, there's nothing else to grab, and I'm going to group them, except this petal is not where I want it to be. So let me fix that first. So make sure I have these arranged the way that I want. And I'll draw a box around the three figures that I want to group. Arrange group. Yep. Okay, and this is pretty big. I feel like I need more petals. I can shrink it down. I can resize it by grabbing the corner and holding Shift and just clicking and dragging until it's the size that I want. And if I want to add leaves, notice that I don't have green. Okay, if I want that in my menu, I need to change from the blue and change it to green. Maybe I want pink and green, but then I would need to redo the coloring on my on my word art for my name. So I'm going to just shrink this and kind of get it off the page. This workspace here is my page. But I can make a blue version. It doesn't have to be green. There's no rule here. So I'm going to make a stem. And if I want it to curve, I'm going to use the curve tool. It's going to be kind of rounded there. And I'm just going to kind of follow that curve. Okay. So again, it defaults to the black outline. And I can make it, I'm using the cornflower blue colors. I can make it kind of a medium blue like that. And right now it's in front, and it doesn't make sense that my stem is going to be in front. So I'm going to grab the flower itself, and I'm going to bring that to the front. Okay, and it looks like it got a little skinny here in the middle, so I'm just going to play with that a little bit. Move these things around until it looks more comfortable. It usually does get thinner towards the top. So I might want to turn this a little bit. Okay, move it until I'm comfortable with it. Now, if I want another one that's the same, we can group these again. Be aware that I'm close to this, so I want to make sure I don't grab it. Arrange group. And if I want to make an exact copy of this and paste it at the same time, Control D, and I make an exact copy. So maybe I want to flip this, arrange, rotate, flip horizontally, and it goes the other way. And I could grab it and rotate like that. Okay, and I might just like that. Maybe I want 3 of them. Duplicate again, no reason to draw that all over again. And this little circle rotates it. Okay, and maybe I want this one a little smaller, so I'm going to hold shift and grab a corner. Ooh, that went really weird. So let me, sometimes when it's sideways like that, it does that. So let me control D on this one. So I just backed up. Anytime you have something happen that you didn't like, back up. Hold shift and click and drag when it's straight up and down. And it usually, yeah, it won't do that really weird thing. Okay, but this happens. It happens when you're doing art where you have something happen that you don't like. So hold shift, click and drag and shrink that down a little bit. And I'm going to rotate that so that the stems can match up a little bit better. Okay, maybe I like that. Maybe I think that's a really nice logo. Maybe I've decided that these stems are too long. I don't know. But let me just, I'm going to move this so I don't accidentally group these with that. So I'm going to say I like my flowers. I'm going to group them, arrange, group. They're too big for my logo. So I'm going to grab the entire thing and I'm going to shrink that down. And I don't want it to interfere with my name. Right now my name can't be seen well with that. So I'm going to take my name and I have these two grouped. I have my name grouped with the background. So I'm going to go to arrange, ungroup, and I'm going to separate them. And so now I can put the flowers, which are grouped, into my logo and decide how I want them in there. Maybe I want them a little more up high. Okay, and then maybe I want my name down low. So there's no rule that my name needs to be in the center. But notice the flowers are in front. So again, I can go to arrange, order, bring to front with my name. And because my name is outlined, that white outline really helps. And that drop shadow can help. I think I want to rotate this just a little bit. And maybe I want this a little bit bigger. Okay, and maybe this big empty space down here feels awkward and weird. So maybe this isn't the shape for me. Maybe at this point I want to look for a shape that's going to fit this better. So I'm just going to select and delete that. I really like what I have here. This feels nice to me, but I want a different shape. So maybe I want like a kind of a half circle. I have a couple of choices in my shapes menu. There's this one here that looks like the letter D, and I can resize that. I can stretch it. Okay, I can rotate it. I can certainly make it a lot bigger. Okay, and maybe that's a good shape for my background. See how I fit it over there. And then I can grab that color that I had before and I can order send to back into the arrange menu. I can ask myself how I feel about that. It seems like there's too much space with my name. Looks like my name should be over to the side a little bit more. Okay. It feels a little uncomfortable because this space is super close here. So I'm just going to stretch that a little bit. Maybe I like it. So I can select, arrange group. Now notice how big my paper is compared to my logo. So I don't want a tiny logo. We did say I want it to look good, big, medium, and small. So I'd say now it's medium. I have the whole thing grouped. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to size it down and say it still looks pretty good. And then I'm going to grab the whole thing again. It's grouped and I'm going to increase the size and look at it big. And in fact, before I turn this into my teacher, that's my finished project, I'm going to hold shift and increase the size. I want it to go almost to the edge, not quite. Okay, so I'm looking at the, I hear a delivery truck outside. So I'm just kind of fitting it into the background and I don't need to do anything with the background. And you know what? I'm pretty happy with that logo. So I have my name. I'm double checking my directions. My name. I used word art. I used two different colors from the color wheel, plus black, white, and gray, just a little bit. I don't have to use those other ones. I have white for the border here. I have a very thin black border here. And my simple object may not be someone else's logo or a copied piece of artwork. Now, I looked at someone else's drawing, but I would not say that's a copy of that. I got some ideas of how to draw a tulip. So I didn't just copy their artwork. I got ideas from it. And a tulip is just an everyday flower. Okay. I could have used a photo if I wanted as well. And I've done these other things at other times. So I've got those things. I've got my shape, my name in word art. I used my two colors, and then the black, white, and gray are optional. And that's it. All right, let me know if you have questions. Make sure you turn in your completed work. Have a great day.